And here we are. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation I'm having today with Chris Cirak. I have talked to him many times, audio only via Skype. This is the first time we are seeing each other on video, so that this is a bit different. And the main explorations for this conversation is about freedom when it comes to feelings and emotions. I'm always like very curious to know what it's like to be free from the torment of our own thoughts and our own minds. Is there a place, another place that we can exist and come from? So this will be one of my main questions. And then, of course, how this freedom can be accessed. How can we maintain this freedom once we find it? And how can it be integrated and perhaps even shared? Which I really feel like, Chris, you do a great job at it, sharing, transmitting this freedom of knowing who you are and coming from a place of truth and of true knowledge. So, my question, as always, is in your own words. Who is Chris Cirak? I would love to hear that from your own perspective.
Okay. Thank you, Valeria. Thank you for having me back. Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Cirak. I'm author of BU, The Journey of Self-Realization. I'm a mindfulness author, speaker. I teach lessons. I've been teaching in higher education and corporate environments for many, many, many decades now. And it's really just about personal transformation and growth, because everything flows from who we are and finding our inner truth and living by our inner truth. And that's really where happiness comes from.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's what I love about your work. Your book, Be You, and the messages, just resonated so powerfully that to this day, I still have the video that we have created. I have on my homepage, like the first page of my website, because it feels so true. Although so many other messages, they feel true, but the way you express that inner truth, it's so clear. It's a transmission, really, because I know it bypasses the mind, it seems to me. But anyway, yeah. Would you like to make a comment about that? Bypassing the mind?
Well, it's a comment, but it's a compliment towards yourself and any listener and any reader who the message resonates with, because ultimately we're always experiencing ourselves. So yes, the words are kind of coming from me. It's a jump off point, but it's a jump off point to experience yourself and where you are in your journey in self-realization. And so you're really just experiencing yourself. So you'll get as much out of it as you're ready and willing and open to receiving. So it's all about you.
Wow. And how did you discover that, Chris? What has your journey been towards this truth?
Right. Well, that is the secret design of life. This was our topic a couple of calls ago.
Yeah.
Where we're being led to experience ourselves deeper and more thoroughly in every situation, every day, every moment. We're reacting, we're engaging with the world around us. And it's specifically when we feel triggered, the happy moments as well. But it's the triggers that show us, that point us towards something inside of us that needs attention, that needs our conscious awareness. And so that is the journey of self-realization, is to get to know yourself better. We seek ourselves in things and experiences, places and people on the outside, but ultimately we're seeking the things in those things that we're missing on the inside. So through that experience of engaging with those things that we're attracted to, well, that's the reason for our attraction. And that is ultimately the beauty of this design of life. We're attracted to things that we need to heal, that we need to grow from in order to get to know ourselves better.
Wow. So would you say that once we get there to the point of self-realization, then we are not attracted to anything that is external? Does it end that attraction?
Yeah, you could say that. There's a recognition of self that remains, but the I need that to be happy, or I need that to feel safe, or I need that to be secure and to cover up the feelings of deficiency and lack that we carry inside. That experience falls away, and then there's just the pure experience of whatever it may be.
Wow. It sounds very spiritual, and I have said that to you before. Although, and I call you a spiritual teacher for a reason. What are your spiritual practices or views, understandings of life and yourself?
Hmm. Well, in my own practices, there's kind of the external practice of really engaging with people, places, and things that resonate.
Yeah.
But you're right. It points to, well, how do we know something resonates? Well, that's our
Yeah.
intuition, our inner voice. It comes from within. It's our blueprint. There's a blueprint in each and every one of us that says essentially this resonates and this doesn't. And
Right.
so then we have to learn to choose to go the resonating path. And then that's how we build momentum. That's how we become fuller as beings. That's how we learn to love ourselves. And then
Mm,
from that full overflowing cup, as
mm.
you know, that's where we can give back and love everyone. So that self-love turns into love for all.
Yeah, doesn't it? And that's interesting to think. Well, the deeper we go into spiritual teachings and practices, has been my case, I see that we are already there, which we call love. So it's almost like
Mhm.
love loving itself, although it doesn't seem to be possible. But we are loving the conditions, right, Chris? Is the conditioned mind, the
Mm.
limited self.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go.
Yeah.
That's a deep one. So that initial love for loving yourself is probably at the surface. It's a reaction. It's a craving. It's a clinging. Ooh, I like that feeling. Ooh, I like this
Yeah.
path. I like all
Yeah.
of this. And that's still attachment, right? That's not just
Mm,
purely
yeah.
experiencing the love. That's
Yeah.
loving the love. And
Yeah.
that love is still kind of a form of clinging and
Wow.
attachment. So it's okay. It's
Yeah.
beautiful in its own way, and that's the human experience. And but then eventually we release that, and then we just experience the direct
Mm.
relationship to being.
Oh my God. I love this topic. I know you sent it to me for this conversation. Besides freedom to feel, is surrender, the mastery of human resistance to being. Um, and with that in mind, oh, I have so many questions when it comes to that. The mind wants to know, and I do understand that that's the domain of the mind, right? It wants to know, and by doing so it keeps itself busy, and then it's what it does. It's nature. It's change, isn't it, Chris? The mind, it's always changing, it's always doing something. We can't stop the
Yeah.
mind for doing. So how do we get to, I guess the question is, how do we get to being without trying or doing something to get there, which is a contradiction.
Yes, and I realized I didn't answer the second part of your question earlier. Is what is my practice, and that's really
Yeah.
what this is. Is it's to learn to, like you say, the mind. It's not a bad thing. It's just
Right.
it's a tool that needs to know.
Yeah.
It just wants
Right.
to know. It's
Right.
designed to know things, and
Yeah.
that's its purpose, and that's great.
Yeah.
But it's learning to apply that tool to the appropriate situations. And when you
Mm,
use that tool to try and make sense of life, your life especially, then the knowing gets in the way. It doesn't help. It shrinks your perspective. It limits you. Every belief is a limitation essentially. And then we don't
ah,
allow life to unfold anymore. We're trying to control it and steer it, because that's just what the mind does. But coming
wow.
out of that mind and sinking into our inner wisdom and our inner truth, then we're allowing, we're not using the mind to live and get
Yeah.
through the day and move forward, but
Right.
rather we're getting into that space
Mm,
of feelings coming and going, arising and passing, and not clinging to some, that's judgment, or
yeah.
resisting others that are unpleasant, that's judgment. And all that
Right.
judgment is mental, right? That's
Ah,
getting pulled back into the head, and then trying to say things are good and bad, or right or wrong, and agree with or disagree with. So that's just right back into the head.
oh
So
my
coming
God.
coming out of it, and my practice is rooted in Vipassana, but there's many different ones. You should
Ah,
explore and find out what works for you. It doesn't have to be pure meditation either. It could be play, it could be art, it could be music. There's walking, nature. Oh my gosh, just go walk
I
in
love
nature
that.
every
Yeah.
day and
Yeah.
you're halfway there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So true.
So yeah.
Yeah, there's something about nature. I want to talk about nature in the moment, but when you said about beliefs, that beliefs, they limiting. So we can, every time we, every belief is limiting. That's, I never heard it that way. So
Oh
by
yeah.
having beliefs, then we are already limiting how much we can experience from that place of the true self.
Right
And
off the bat.
right. And I
Right
wonder
off the
how,
bat.
but how can we navigate this reality without belief systems and values and all those things? Is that, yeah, is that possible? Or we do it anyway in certain situations.
Well, there's the journey is to try and navigate it through the mental lens and try to steer and control and understand things and so forth. And then the journey is to eventually realize that doesn't work.
Yeah,
It's just if even if bad things don't happen, because that itself is judgment too, right?
yeah,
And then we
yeah.
react to that and we try to control and steer more, and then we start to live in fear and anxiety, and oh
Oh,
my
yeah,
gosh, it's just
yeah.
downhill.
So true.
But even if that's not the case, the just letting life unfold, a much bigger picture reveals itself that once you start to experience it a little bit, you very quickly realize, oh my gosh, and we've all had
Yeah,
these kinds of experiences where like
yeah,
I could never have predicted this. I could never have made up this path.
yeah.
And with some years, you
True.
can look back and go, this happened completely differently than I ever expected. But it
Yes.
is great for how it happened. And if I had resisted a little less, it would have,
Ah,
it would have been smoother and I could have embraced it. And then the embracing all of a sudden leads to flowing. And now I'm flowing with it, with the greater
mm,
current, instead of in this lockstep of resistance.
I know. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a powerful practice, isn't it? Not to resist to anything, to just let whatever's happening just happen the way it is happening exactly. Would you say that the cause of all suffering is resistance?
Yeah. I mean, it's, let me see, all suffering.
Yeah.
It's definitely at the top of that list.
Yeah.
Um, it's a belief is a form of resistance.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Right.
a form of you're labeling something, and
True.
labeling is always a mental thing. Even just calling a tree. Now
Mm,
there's I'm over here, an
mm,
identity, and the tree's over there. That's
yeah.
another identity, a label, and
Yeah.
it's there's distance between me and the tree because
Ah,
I've applied
mm,
a mental concept to it.
mm.
And then I do it to the tree, and I do it to the coffee maker, and I do it to my car, and I do it to
Everything.
everything all day long.
Mm,
Distance, distance,
mm,
distance, separation, separation, separation. And then
true.
we feel lonely and separate and
Mm.
removed from life, from the flow.
Yeah, so it's almost like it's creating objects, isn't it, Chris? So
Mhm,
it's subject
mhm.
object relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
It really feels like everything's separate from the mental space for sure, and the physical. So when it comes to mental states and physical states, which one comes first? Have you wondered? Like everything comes from the mind. Is the physical a manifestation of a mental
Mhm.
construct and thoughts?
Oh wow. No, I think our bodies are real.
It feels like
They're always changing. They're always evolving. There really is no memory and past and future and all that. Those are definitely mental constructs. So you're only experiencing yourself now, 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 now.
uh,
Everything else is just mental projection.
mm,
And a lot of the fear and anxiety and regret and all this stuff that it lives in those projections. They're also not real.
right.
They're kind of tucked into those mental concepts. But I mean, the body's real and it's there for a while. And in many ways, we've had to. Um, we can only be in our body because we're limited, because we carry
Yeah.
blind spots, because we're unconscious
Mm,
in many of our
mm,
parts.
mm,
And the body can then, because those unconscious blind spots are lower frequencies that don't vibrate at a very high
yeah.
frequency, so they can be contained in this thing called we call a
Uh,
body. And as soon as we kind of come out of those blind areas, then you immediately feel lighter. You feel like
yeah.
life is just passing through you. Something
Yeah.
doesn't trigger you. There's no load, the charge about some situation or some
True.
feeling or experience. It's left you, and so you feel lighter and lighter. So just imagine
Yeah.
when you're light about everything, you just kind of
Wow.
take off.
Wow. And that the takeoff Do you mean not coming back in another human body, or the energy keeps coming back? I mean, because everything ultimately
Mm.
is who we are, right? There's nothing separate.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great. I love this. I always love these conversations with you. So I think it's everything, both and everything. So the body, see, I
Mm,
absolutely feel like I could levitate if I just keep going. And
yeah.
there are others who can do that. But if anyone who's experienced like a deep, prolonged experience of sitting and meditating and breathing, doing breath work and all that stuff, you do feel like you can take
Yeah.
off at some point. But then also just our entire being, our soul, if it reaches a level of frequency, cumulative frequency, where you can't be contained in the body anymore, then I guess you just won't be in the body. Maybe you'll inject
Uh,
yourself into some other existence,
right.
but not
Huh.
this planet.
Yeah. How fascinating to for the mind. For anybody listening, watching this that doesn't yet understand these ideas, it sounds like almost like surreal, and it can be possible not to be entirely the body or the mind, the thinking mind, and how come? Where do we go then when you talk about leaving the body in kind of finding a different form of being? So, what would you say to somebody who doesn't yet understand the message? Is this something that it can be said but not heard? Is that the case, or do you only communicate with people who are open to understand these principles, Chris?
I mean, so what we're discussing here is, it's far out stuff. It's the
It is,
edge
yeah.
of where thought can take us, and it's fun and it has its
Right. It
purpose.
is fun. I
Um,
agree. I agree. Yeah.
yeah. Now, in terms of practical, my message, my teaching is it doesn't matter all those ideas about what could happen, what should happen, why does it exist, why do we exist,
Mm,
all that. It's great, but in the journey itself really is to experience yourself. It's to experience emotions coming through you and learning to not react to them. So both
right.
clinging and resisting are reactions. And if you look very, very closely, we're all conditioned by a world that is constantly looking to elicit reaction from us. We're all
Yeah.
conditioned to
Yeah.
judge our feelings, to
Yeah.
react to them. Oh, that one is unpleasant. Oh, this one is pleasant. That one
Right.
I don't like. This one I
Yeah.
like. And so we're actually not feeling our feelings. We're reacting to our feelings most of the time.
Mm,
There's a quick onset of the feeling, and then we already react to it, right? So
right.
that is the crux of all of our this roller coaster experience of life. And so how do we come out of that? It's to learn to feel your feelings. All the other
Mm,
stuff is
mm.
wonderful, philosophical and spiritual, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
But the practice and
Mm,
the journey of self-discovery is to learn
mm.
to feel your feelings. Everything else takes care of itself.
Oh my God. I love that, how clear you communicate that message. And this is exactly the reason why we're having this conversation, right? The freedom to feel, to
Yes.
be free enough uh, to let the feelings be what they are. It's not easy to do, so that takes a practice. What is one of the first practices that you would recommend somebody to engage in?
Yeah. So I teach two types of meditation. I call one thought awareness and the other body awareness. Thought awareness is kind of the foundation. It's to sharpen the mind, and it's simple breath work of focusing on the incoming and outgoing breath in your nose. And essentially, you're you're retraining your mind. That is, it starts to feel threatened when we do breath work and
Yeah,
even yoga and all these things, right? The
yeah,
mind comes in and pulls our
yeah,
attention away to
yeah.
go down those rabbit holes of
Right.
beliefs.
Sure.
So it's
Yeah.
the ability to notice and, oh, I just, my mind drifted, and to bring it back to your breath, bring it back to your breath over and over and over. It's a rewiring of the brain to come out of this noisy, fickle
Yeah.
space, and to just calm down, and not be the hijacker constantly, right, to
Mm,
our experience.
yeah.
And so
Huh.
that's the calming of the mind, the coming out of the headspace, as I call it. And then from there, you have the groundedness and the focus, the ability to focus on your body and to scan your body. That's the body awareness part.
Yeah.
All feelings show up as sensations somewhere. Somewhere. Everything
Yeah.
we feel, whenever we feel
Mm,
triggered, whenever we feel happy, it's showing up somewhere in your body.
yeah.
If you don't feel it, well, there's a blind spot there, but it's there. And
Ah.
so learning
Huh.
to observe that sensation, that is feeling your feeling. not to push it away the moment you think it's unpleasant, or to
Right.
cling to it when you realize, ooh, that feels good, but to
Right.
just experience it. That's feeling your feelings,
Mm.
and we just have to learn to do that. It
Oh
takes
my
time,
God.
but that is returning ourselves to the flow. That
Yeah.
is flowing with life and the great current. And
So
we,
true.
this small identity that we think we are, it just
Yeah.
kind of dissipates.
Oh my God. Yeah. It resonates so true to me because I engage in these practices. I do exactly that. And it works sometimes, it sometimes doesn't work because it, right, being present all the time, I don't know. Sometimes I just kind of let myself be so much that there's no even a gap to kind of analyze the feelings, and I'm just completely into the experience. But I guess that
Yeah.
that's yeah.
What you say there is key, and it's next level stuff, in that when it's not working, to be okay with and experience the not working, that is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
practice.
Right. Right, right. It's not,
It's
yeah.
not
Right.
it's not looking for it has to be a certain way, and I'm looking for that
Yeah.
feeling of
Mm,
glee or peace or
yeah.
whatever it may be.
Yeah.
That's a stage to
Yeah.
experience that, great, but the kind of the ultimate stage is that when you get there and like, oh wow, my mind is crazy busy today.
Yeah. Yeah. And stay with that, not reject. Yeah,
Mhm.
those moments. Another, yes, I want to ask you a question about the practice of feeling our feelings and staying with them. I noticed that for me, what really helped as I became a lot more aware of the body and how it works, for me was caffeine. I used to drink coffee. Oh my God, that was the worst thing. I never did well with coffee. And then when I stopped, and then I went on green tea, but that was still
Mm.
caffeinated. And then I lowered the dose. I kept lowering the dose, but it still didn't work. I had to get off caffeine altogether, or anything that has caffeine in it. So I wonder if, from your perspective, do you also suggest your clients to get off or engage with some kind of diet, different kind of diet or
Yeah.
lifestyle that includes the
Yeah.
body?
Yeah, great question. So it's important not to view anything as bad and to reject it, because that's just more
Ah,
judgment, and we get into it,
yeah,
right. But it's also important to recognize that anything, caffeine, the prescription, whatever it may be, video game, it's just literally
ah,
anything that interferes with you feeling your feelings, that
ah,
either heightens your
mm,
sensations artificially or numbs them artificially, whatever that
right,
is, it's not in your interest.
right.
um, eh, because the
Mm,
whole growth, the whole process of self-realization is to feel them as they are.
mm, yeah,
And we're just complicating things by introducing these stimulants and
right.
suppressants.
I agree. So they are not bad, but they do get in the way, right, Chris? When we are trying to feel our feelings, because it has been my experience. I had to stop, and now, not that I call coffee a bad thing. I don't say it's bad, but it has not. It doesn't. And I'm wondering if that's another belief system. It might be, right? Hmm.
Well, that's a great point. So I don't, I quit coffee 18 years ago.
Uh,
Soda,
yeah.
meat, then became
Uh,
vegan, no alcohol. Not, I mean, I'm as clean as possible
mm,
because I want to feel my feelings. I want to
right.
feel my sensations in as
Wow.
in much authentic and in an organic way as possible, because
Yeah.
I just know that's the path to expansion,
Mm,
healing and expansion. Now,
mm,
from that, the more we connect with our and actually feel our feelings, there's a frequency and a self-knowing that kind of arises from there that will tell you, this is good for me and this is not good for me. For some people,
right.
they have to eat meat. Other people, they don't. So it's like
Right.
just that your own truth starts to rise. So I'm the
Mm,
last person
yeah.
to say that one thing is right or wrong, and I'm the first person to say you got to find your inner truth.
Yeah.
Because you'll know if it's time to quit coffee. You'll just wake up knowing it,
Yeah.
as it was the case with me. But if it's like you're loving it and it's giving you some other dimension, and then that's your truth at that point in time too, right? We don't have to hold on to that truth forever. Just stay in touch with ourselves and stay
Mm.
flowing with our own truth.
Oh wow, moment by moment. Yeah, it doesn't. I love that. So it's not coming from our belief systems, but it's something that the more we come from this clean, spacious place within ourselves, then it's easy to know what keeps us there within that space and what doesn't. Right. I still eat meat. I eat fish, but I do refrain from red meat for some reason. Not that it's bad, but I don't kind
Mhm.
of don't go there. And chicken I never eat. So that's interesting. And I don't know why exactly. It just doesn't. There's no interest anymore.
Yeah.
That's kind
Yeah.
of interesting to see the fall, the drop of
Yeah.
these things.
Exactly. And what you're describing is transformation inside out. There's this whole industry around habit forming, which the reason why it's so difficult is because you're trying to change yourself outside in. You're
Yeah.
trying to create these routines and rituals and habits and all that stuff. And it works to some extent, but it's much harder to change yourself outside in than to raise your own frequency and be
Mm,
connected to your own truth. And then you just know, you literally wake up that way and knowing like this is for me and this is not for me. So
yeah. Yeah. What a
it's much
great
easier to
message.
go that way.
Right. Because natural. I love anything that's natural. So
Mhm.
that sounds really
Mhm. Yeah.
natural. I have some quotes here, some things that I have learned throughout my journey and talking to so many people. As you know, I'm always reading and talking to people. Um, I heard that trauma is an incomplete experience. I never heard that before. Have you
Ooh.
heard? Yeah. How does it sound to you? Trauma is
Mm.
an incomplete experience.
Okay, yeah, I have not heard that before.
Yeah.
My initial hit on that would be that it kind of ties into what we've been talking about. If you experience something and it ends abruptly because of some
Mm,
pushing away of the feeling. In this
yeah.
case, trauma, bigger
Mm,
feelings, bigger life
yeah.
situations that really
Yeah.
define you and that you carry forward. But even trauma is just it's just emotions that are not felt fully, that are suppressed
Mm,
and
yeah.
abruptly changed and rejected and resisted, and then they get
Mm,
stuck in you, and then we have these stuck
right.
feelings that we then
Mm,
react to
yeah.
the world around us. With the reaction is
Mm,
actually comes
mm,
second. The trying to cover it up is the
right.
primary avoidance behavior. So
Yeah.
we try to cover those things up with people, places, and things, and then
Yeah.
then we start to go deeper, and then we're in the react. I'm reacting. I feel triggered, and then we go to the well, I'm feeling triggered here, over here. Let me give that attention, not push it away, and over here. And so there's many different ways to go about it and access those feelings, to release them again, those stuck feelings.
Yeah.
But ultimately, yeah, I would say that
Mm.
trauma is something not felt fully.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? It resonated true to me when I heard that. And then what came to me was that all experiences are complete. Everything that's happening now or happened before, they had this wholeness around them. So I don't know why that thought came, but then it kind of I became almost like something in me smiled, and it was a relief kind of to recognize that everything is complete, even if it doesn't feel like with the mind, but it is already complete. Isn't that amazing, Chris?
It is
Yeah.
amazing. So it's a little tricky
Yeah.
because words have meanings and they have different. I
Mm,
teach a whole class on listening and how different
yeah.
words have different meanings. Even the simplest phrases we interpret differently based on our
Yeah.
own internal makeup, right?
True.
So there's no it's our own personal truth is objective, I guess, but there's no
Yeah.
objective truth for all. Um, but so every experience, there isn't really a beginning or an
Mm.
end. It's the
Yeah.
mind saying this is when it started, this is when it ended, and then that was the experience. But okay,
Right.
let's for the sake of discussion say I went to a concert and getting there, arriving there was the beginning, and then coming home when or maybe the after party, whatever was the end. So we
Yeah.
kind of create these time containers.
Yeah.
Um, but they are, they are complete in our experience of them, but then we interrupt them with judgment again. I
Mm.
like this so much, I want to have it again,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
we try to keep that experience alive and try to recreate it over and over.
Yeah.
Or we yearn for it from the past, and again we're not really present. All these things
Mm.
keep us from
Yeah.
experiencing what we should be experiencing, what is
Yeah.
real, which is right now. And
Yeah.
now we're only experiencing these other experiences
Right.
that are really kind of mental attachments.
Isn't it?
So everything gets so complicated,
Mm,
when we live through the mind, because
yeah.
we're even
Yes.
discussing this and trying to unravel and peel back the layers of what
Yes.
just an experience is. Yeah, right. It's
Yeah.
just all unnecessary. It's
Mm,
so much noise,
mm.
that it's fun to indulge in it for a bit, but then it's much more fun to release it again and surrender.
Yeah, and surrender. Go back to that word. So, why do you feel this is a mystery? I know you call it surrender, the mystery of human resistance to being. Um, what is mysterious about it?
Well, the biggest mystery is why we're in resistance to the very system that has our utmost well-being at heart.
Yeah, yeah.
Life is constantly
Mm,
mirroring who we are and showing us where we need to heal. And we're in
mm,
resistance to
mm.
that.
Yes, yes.
It's the ultimate doctor, right? It's there at all times, telling us, reflecting back what we need to work on to get better again.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
somehow we just
yeah.
don't want to listen. We think we know it better.
Yeah.
And then we try to steer
Mm,
and control, and our
yeah,
whole life goes by like that.
yeah.
It's the big
And
mystery.
it's a mystery because we don't get to realize it. We get to kind of we are in the midst of this uh of school per se, as you say, life's trying to teach us. We're in the middle of it, but we're not able to learn. We're not able to listen and really, and this is because of the mind, my Chris. The mind is just constantly trying to know something and going ahead or staying behind. And
Yeah,
yeah.
we've just become very, very mental in modern society. I think if in past eras where you were more in nature naturally as part of living
Yeah.
and life and working and such, it kept that in check,
Yeah.
that mental chaos.
Yeah.
But working sitting at computers at desks all days,
I know.
it's just ripe for just mind just going berserk. And,
Yes. Yeah.
and society really puts emphasis on mental acuity, right? And we're developed and conditioned from the get-go to get degrees and certificates, and
Yeah.
and knowledge is king, when
Yeah.
knowledge is dead. Knowledge is stuff
Mm.
you already know.
Mm.
Which is not alive. It's
Mm.
dead because it's
Yeah.
the past. It's kind of
Yeah.
pulling the
Huh.
past with you.
Yes. Oh my God. Interesting to hear about knowledge. I do call it spiritual knowledge. Do you also see it that way when it comes to that, having access to that deeper truth? Um, I don't know why I adopted this phrase. It's accessing spiritual knowledge. Would you say it differently?
No, I mean, that's great. There's a knowing, there's an inner knowing.
Yeah.
And using the words that we have, I mean, language is very
Yeah,
limited.
it is.
But we're doing an
True.
amazing job here, I think, maximizing it. But it's the true knowing comes from within, and it's just rock solid. It's not based on comparison. What does anybody
Mm,
else say, or what do they think? You just know what your truth is.
yeah.
And that's the most
Yeah.
rock solid. That's your GPS for life. The mental knowing, and kind of what the media has bombarded you with, or parents have bombarded you with, your environment, education, all this mental knowledge, is it's very fleeting. You constantly have to reinforce it. You should constantly have to validate it. You're
Yeah.
looking for validation, because if there something comes
Mm,
along that invalidates your beliefs and your knowledge, your whole world starts to crumble, and
true.
I feel like the rug is being pulled out from underneath your life. Well, it's because your life is resting on your
Mm.
head space, your knowledge,
Ah,
your mind made identity. So
right.
that's again the roller coaster. That's where we get into tough situations in life, where we melt down and we hit rock bottom, and we feel like there has to be a better way, and there is, but it takes that process to get there.
Wow. So it's almost like we have to go through all, I mean, through everything in order to get to the other side that's no thing. It's almost like the, yeah, thing and no thing. I love having these conversations with you because not just um, it brings a lot of more clarity. It's a reminder of being in that space that's not mental, although we're having a conversation from that space of language, which it is mental. It's learned, right? But I love what I love about you, and I have said that off record and also by email, and I probably said that audio too. There's something about your presence that really transmits that truth, and that is yeah, I love that because we don't need I don't need words to get it. It's just there, and it stays with me. Like every time I think of you, it's very light, and there's a lot of peace around it. It's almost like a symbol for peace and love. So thank you so much for being open to that extent to become what you're trying to communicate. um,
Yes. Well, that's
Beautiful.
very kind of you. I think ultimately you're experiencing yourself, right?
Mm,
And just the way I've worked on myself to judge myself less, to criticize myself less,
yeah,
to know myself better, and all that. That leads to a beingness where I'm not in the state of comparison. And so
yeah,
when anyone
mm,
engages with me, they're not going to
mm.
feel as judged,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
but as they would by somebody else maybe who's they're perceiving and they're engaging from a place of constant evaluation. Do I believe in what this person says? Do I not
yeah.
believe what this person says? Does it
Right,
upset my truth? And
right.
all these
Yeah,
this madness.
yeah.
But I don't. I
Mad.
fortunately don't. I've worked on that, and so I don't have too much of it. And then I think that comes through, and people feel very comfortable and at peace with in my presence. But really, they're in their own presence.
That's beautiful to hear too. So we are reflections of one another. It's almost like we are reflecting. The other person's reflecting us back. How fascinating! It's it really feels like a dream, doesn't it? When we get to, I mean, I don't want to talk about dreams now, but it really feels like it to me.
Yeah.
um,
Well, you're doing the same for me as well. I'm like, if you look at my image, I'm smiling through the whole
yeah,
through the whole
yeah,
show
right,
because I'm experiencing that joy
yeah.
that you bring and the openness and the receiving and that exchange of energy. So I'm getting that, and it lights me up too. So yeah.
How wonderful if we all could do that to get to that point. It would be a very different reality, right, Chris? Here,
we
um,
can, we can,
and
we're on our way.
yeah, thank you for the contribution to that. Another, we're almost at the end. It goes by so quickly when we're doing these interviews. I'm used to audio a lot, and this is the time passes by so fast. There's no time anyway, but it feels like it. Another quote that I heard, somebody said, one of the guests that I interviewed was about healing. She said, "The goal of all healing is to release fear." I think I mentioned that to you before. I'm not sure, but I would love to hear your comment on that.
Yeah, I would take it even a step further that fear is an emotion. There's many gradients of that: anxiety, doubt, self
Yeah.
judgment. I mean, so it's a word, but what it describes, even underlying that, is not feeling your feelings fully. Because whatever unpleasant
Yeah.
feeling came along, even if it was unpleasant and scary, allowing it to pass through you is the quickest way for it to leave you, because
True.
it naturally would. Not all emotions arise and pass unless
Mm,
we
yeah.
inject our judgment into them, our clinging and resisting. So
Yeah.
fear is a big one. Is absolutely. I wouldn't say it's the only one, but
Ah,
and what does that mean really? It's a different experience of fear for every single one of us. So, but for the sake of description, fear is a lot. That it's fundamental to our resistance to expansion. You could call
ah,
that fear. So
yeah.
that growing is uncomfortable, that healing is uncomfortable. That's a
Mm,
fear.
yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, if you frame it
Yeah.
that way, you could argue fear is ultimately at the root of everything, and then love on the other end of the
Mm,
spectrum is
yeah.
at the is everything on that end, and maybe they need to coexist because one
Ah,
couldn't be one without the other.
right. That's interesting
It's a
that you
whole nother
said
show.
that. It is. Yeah, love and fear. Yeah, right, I'll keep that in mind too. I also heard that the last stage of trauma, going back because feelings and emotions, when we're stuck with them, it's called trauma. So So I'm going back to the term trauma. So I heard that the last stage of trauma is acceptance and finding meaning. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, those are great terms. I have so what comes to mind is, and I'm more conscious as I go along. It's like, is that the right word to say?
Yeah,
Coming to
yeah,
mind. Well, no, it's actually
yeah.
what's arising for me.
Yeah,
Right? That's
yeah,
a little better. Is
yeah, yeah,
the
mm,
acceptance is one should be careful not to get too caught up on definitions. Again,
yeah,
there's an experience, and you could call it the experience of acceptance, or surrender,
yeah,
or
yeah,
appreciation, or
yeah.
embrace. I mean, they're
Mm,
all in that
mm,
family, but
true.
it's a what they all describe as the experience of dropping resistance, and dropping judgment, and just allowing the feeling to be, and
Wow.
giving it space to
Mm,
be, and
yeah.
and in even welcoming it. If you can welcome the
Wow.
world, this
Mm,
incessant stream of
mm,
abundance that life is
mm.
sending our way,
True.
and to sit in every
Mm,
moment and go, ooh,
mm.
what comes next?
Right.
Then we're really welcoming and
Ah,
inviting, right, the
mm,
flow. Then we're really surfing, right?
wow.
But
I love
but
that.
then there's a
Mm.
wisdom that arises, a deepening that happens. So that is the finding meaning part. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. I love that. I mean, I love, yeah, I love the wisdom. So true. The welcoming of everything that is here is so abundant. I mean, it's incredible. And we create so much resistance to pieces of life. We don't accept the wholeness of life. Yeah. So yeah, I'm letting that sink in too. Yeah, beautifully said, Chris. Let's see. So how is the message? Yeah, so that question I asked, I think I went through all the main questions that I wanted to ask you, but I I do want to kind of go back and perhaps summarize the idea of being. Like, what does it feel like? I know that there's this openness and expansiveness of being here now, being present, and letting everything, including my own feelings, be. Is there any? Is there another way with language that you can describe this state of being when we are there, Chris?
Mhm. Well, it's freedom. And that is really
Mm,
the name of your show.
yeah,
It's you
freedom.
feel
Yeah,
free. You are
yeah,
free from the vast majority of our headaches we create for ourselves through
yeah.
this mechanism of
Mm, mm,
resisting our feelings, right?
yeah.
And so 98% of our suffering is self-generated. Ultimately, there's
Ah,
still pleasant and unpleasant feelings, sensations, right?
right.
But they are minuscule compared to the drama we create for ourselves.
So true.
So in the absence of that drama, there's just unbelievable lightness and freedom, and
Yeah,
just witness state and wonder, and like
yeah.
just I mean, if you wonder too much, you
Mm,
might just like lift off, just because I
yeah.
mean it's so miraculous, all of this. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
It is. I know. And I try to keep myself grounded a lot of times, and because I have been there already, yeah, to the point of completely out there.
We
But
have to we have to intentionally like believe in something so that we don't fly away like
mm,
balloons.
intentionally, right. I
At
love
some
that
point,
too.
at some point we have to like make use of our time here. We're in our bodies, we're in this
Ah,
dimension, we're on this planet, and so you're going to have to
ah,
make the most out of it. Listen to that inner voice, fulfill your blueprint. That's your
mm.
purpose. And even though you could just fly
Yeah.
away,
I
you
like that.
gotta.
I like that a lot, actually. I mean, the
Yeah.
flying away part, and then also the intentionally believing something, so we stay grounded. Like hosting this podcast, doing what I do, it's really that
Yes.
intentional belief of that I'm having a
Mhm.
conversation about something that's separate from me, but I know it's not. But yeah, right, keeps us grounded. How amazing! And of course, I have to say the challenge with that is uh, trying to be intentional with our beliefs everywhere with everyone, and that sometimes it doesn't happen. Like, for example, if I have conversations with people around me, my family members, about war, they believe in the war and going to war and killing people and all that, and I don't. So it's a belief system, I know, that doesn't resonate. But uh, that's when I see that I'm getting um, almost like out of the space of freedom, because then I feel the body contracting, because I'm in resistance of accepting the message of war, that that's okay to fight, it's
Mhm.
okay to be violent.
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah, I would love to hear from you on that, because it has been one of my challenges.
Right. So one of the biggest sources of friction in life is wanting other people to be different.
Yeah. Mm,
And because if you take people at face value,
yeah.
the vast majority of people, 95% of people, are predictable. You know who they are when they show
Mm,
up, be it
yeah.
a friend, family member, a politician. When they step up to the podium, you know what to expect.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of
Mm,
silly to get
mm,
upset wanting them to
mm,
be different,
mm.
right? So
Yeah.
there is a small percent of people who show up hot cold. They're kind of two-faced, and it's hard
Yeah.
to
No, no.
predict who's going to show up a particular day. Those are difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
But for the most part, people are totally predictable in the most common use of the term. And so there's an acceptance in that,
Ah,
and like, this is who they are. And if you can
mm,
start with, all right, this is who they are, but then move into a place of wonder. I know it may be
yeah.
hard with the topic of, something as
Uh,
charged as that, but
yeah.
if you
Silence.
can get to like, wow, this is how they think.
The wonder of that, right? Like, how
Yeah, it's
come?
just, and then you're
Yeah.
fully empathic with
Yeah.
them and their process, and it's just amazing. You're not in a state of comparison. This is how I think. You're with them,
Right. Right.
right? And
Ah.
then that
Ah.
friction leaves you, and you can let them be whoever they be, and you're just amazed that they are the way they are, and they're
Ah.
probably amazed that you are the way you are. It's just like, and you kind of rise above the whole thing.
Wow, I love that suggestion, and I'm gonna try that. Which I try. I do
Report
a
back.
different. Yeah, right. Really works. Now that I'm thinking, yeah, of course. The wonderment of how come, how can someone think this way? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. But that's it's what it is. Uh, what I do is because I see the divine everywhere. This is almost like a
Mhm,
I can't help it, but I
mhm,
look
mhm.
into their eyes and that's what I see. So that's what my focus goes, my attention goes into. Oh, it's the
Yes.
divine speaking anyway.
Yeah, and
uh,
that works too. If that works for you, that's
it
awesome. Keep
does.
doing that.
Yeah.
If try something else, if that starts to fade or shift, or
Yeah.
brings another tool into your toolbox. Okay, you can
Right.
do the divine thing,
Yeah.
and then you've got the wonder thing, and
Now I've got two tools.
yeah, and then you've got the I don't know, silence,
Oh,
distance
yeah.
approach, like
Yeah, we have so many, right? That's you see, that's good
yeah,
to have access to those, right?
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
and that's how we gain access to freedom too, right? With those tools. And thank you so much again, Chris, for sharing them. I love how generous you are too.
Oh yeah, one more thing.
Yeah.
It's important to recognize that when we're dealing with people who trigger us,
Yeah.
it's our reaction that keeps them that way. It keeps the
Ah.
dynamic in place. We're actually part and parcel
Mm,
of the whole dynamic in our resistance to who they are.
mm, mm.
And if you continue being in resistance to who they are, you're going to keep
Ah,
that dynamic in place. You're contributing
ah.
to it as much as they are.
Wow.
So
S-
one of them, somebody in the group has to change the dynamic, change the energy, shift, and
Ah.
then everyone shifts. It's
Wow.
miraculous. I've seen it for myself. Everyone growing up has a certain animosity and resistance to maybe
Yeah.
their parents or uncles or others and teachers and so forth.
Right.
But doing the work on yourself and coming
Mm.
out of resistance, they then suddenly don't feel resisted any longer in their
Ah.
opinions, and then they start to soften
Ah.
up, and then they start to
Mm.
self-reflect. It creates an opening.
Wow. I love this suggestion too. It makes a lot of sense, right? So I know it's a mental thing, intellectual thing, but it really, really resonates when you say that we are helping them by resisting them. We are creating even more resistance. We are actually helping that reality for them to
Fueling them.
stay, yeah, to stay the way
Mhm.
it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Ah, okay, that's another practice for me. Gosh, there's so many of them.
And they're fueling us back,
Yeah,
right, in our
yeah,
resistance to them.
right.
So
How amazing. Thank you so much, Chris. Yeah, thank you for those amazing reminders. Yeah, thank you so much for being you again. And we're almost at the end. Before we end the conversation today, I do have a question for you. This is the ending question. What is actually, there's anything that you left unsaid that you'd like to add before I ask you those questions, those ending questions?
I think the most important thing is with everything that we've kind of tossed around, it's a journey. Every experience is valid. There's no right or wrong. The self judgment is what actually creates most of the problems and slows us down and we veer off track. But ultimately, you're almost never on track. The journey is constantly veering off track, and then kind of coming back to the middle and then kind of veering again. So we have to be kind to ourselves and everything. If meat tastes great, eat it. If meditating 5 hours a day does it, you just whatever it is, there's no right or wrong in terms of what anyone else thinks. Just find your own truth, live by your own truth, and let your path unfold.
Oh, I love that. Yes, a trillion times to that, to those words when they sink in and then they become a practice. And yeah, thank you so much. So you answered my question. I had a question for you about one message you wish everybody to take with them, but that's the message. Before we say
Keep
goodbye,
it simple and go easy on yourself.
yeah, right. There's one message, right? Keep it simple.
Yeah.
That's another one I love. So before we say goodbye for today, where can we find more information about you, your work, your books, and everything that you offer, your services?
Yes, you can find my book
Yeah.
on Amazon, also my website, Cirak.com. I'm on all social media accounts, Chris Cirak, and there's Google my name. You can't miss me. You'll figure out a way to find me if you want to.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much again, Chris, for your presence, and we'll talk soon. Bye for now.
Thank you, Valeria. Thank you.